I'd like to call the meeting to order.
That they're looking at.
If I could get everybody's
We'll see
attention.
what happens. Probably the hammer.
You got my votes for it. Camera go.
Remember, I can slam this down hard. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting of the Bristol County Water Authority Board of Directors meeting to order. It's Thursday, April 27th. It's a little bit after 5 o'clock. I believe maybe only a minute. I'm Juan Mariscal. I'm the acting chair of the Bristol County Water Authority. That's the first thing on the agenda is call to order. The second item is public input. And I see that we do have a couple of members of the public here tonight. And I would ask you if you have any comments you want to make, that you identify yourselves, where you live, and the meetings are being recorded and videotaped, and they show up on our website later on. So,
Great. Hi, I'm Chris Corey. This is my wife, Erica Corey. We're residents
how do you spell your last name?
Corey. We're residents in Barrington at 4 Pheasant Lane. And the reason why we're here is we've had continuous water issues with respect to quality since October of last year. Immediately after some work that was done on Rumstick Lane, we experienced a buildup of sediment and sand throughout our water system, in our showers, in our bathtubs and faucets, etc. We reached out to Sue and then ultimately to Dave DeSilva to come down and to hopefully remediate. After probably 6 or 7 attempts over the last 6 months, mostly trying to flush out the system, we still are experiencing what is continued buildup into our water system. We've engaged our own plumbers, A&L Mechanical, who service the house. Their recommendation is to replace the water tank, the hot water tank. It appears we've isolated the materials or sediment that's coming out of our faucets on the hot water side, not the cold water side. So we think that replacing the hot water tank is the only way at this point to fix the issue. In addition, they're recommending to put a whole house water filter on there to make sure that nothing's coming in from the street. Obviously, this has been a challenge for us and our family. We have 3 little kids. We drink the water, we cook with the water, we bathe with the water, and so having this has been a constant issue. And your team has been responsive every step of the way, but we just haven't been able to solve it. So we're here to let the board know that this is an issue. This is an issue that we're going to have to file a claim for. We're starting the work as early as next week to replace the water tank and to insert the filter, and we'll be going through the claim process that we need to get educated on ourselves. And then, hopefully that there's a swift resolution, because it will be money out of our pocket that we would like to be reimbursed for on short order. We've also talked to Dave and the team, Dave DeSilva and the team, about work that's ongoing today, ongoing at Rumstick now, about just ensuring that this doesn't happen again. We are at a low point in the water system. I don't know if that matters, but just that the right shutting off happens, and we're not the landing zone for more sediment and sand in the future. So respectfully, we ask you to consider this. We've brought some pictures for you all to see about this is what we're experiencing. Show you the faucet. You can pass this around. I'll need this back. But you just pass it on just to get a sense of what we're dealing with our water day in and day out.
Right.
Do your neighbors have the same?
Excuse me. The item, we accept the public input. We understand your situation. What we need to do is we can't take any action on it as a board because it's not on our agenda as an action item. So what we need to do is we will refer to our claims committee. The claims committee would then do a review of the situation, probably have some discussions with you as well as staff, and then come to a conclusion as to whether it's something that is, should be, that we would reimburse you for whatever costs that you've incurred and so forth. And that's really the only thing that we can say at this meeting tonight. We can, our chair of the Claims Committee wants to ask a lot of questions, and he'd be able to do that in his committee meeting.
Yeah,
Joe-
it's not, you're right, it's not on the agenda tonight, so what we'll do is, I'm actually gonna communicate with the Corys, I'll talk to them for a moment. I'm Joe Keto, I'm the lawyer for the board. They had a lawyer contact that I spoke with. So for tonight, you're right, we'll take the public input, I'm gonna make sure it's on the agenda for the next meeting, and in the interim, as you said, we'll be in contact with them to talk about this and to get this moving. And at that point, maybe we can have them in and ask questions, but for now, it's not on the agenda tonight.
Okay, so with that, I'd ask for a motion to refer this to the Claims Committee.
You can't, it's not on the agenda.
Oh, that's true.
It's not on the agenda.
You're right.
What do we need to do then? Dick? Okay.
Okay. But the process gets initiated when they make the claim, file the paperwork, and
Yeah,
it goes to the
yeah,
Claims
yeah.
Committee. Okay.
That's fine. I think we just wanted like the board to know what was going on before
Right.
any more of the public knows what's going
Yeah.
on with this. This
Yeah.
is a really big issue, so it wasn't just, we wanted to deal with the claims, we
And-
wanted you all to hear it anyway.
Right, and our business is clean water, clean drinkable water, and we want to serve our customers to provide that clean drinkable water. And if we're having problems within the system that we can resolve, we want to be able to do that. And we've acted on many issues over the years, whether they're big ones or small, along these lines. And I think we've always come to a fair resolution on those. So you can chat with our attorney and start the claims process.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for hearing us.
The next item on the agenda was approval of the minutes from the board meeting of March 23rd. Do I have a motion? I have a motion to approve. So I have a second. Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor of the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, it's unanimous. Now we have the Executive Director's report, Mr. Kutulis.
Okay, good evening. For the Kentucky Pipeline project, phase one is essentially done. Minor punch list items include, we need to replace a couple of trees up at Kent Heights that didn't seem to make the construction or the transition there. But other than that, that project's complete. The phase two, the design is advanced to the 60% level from Kent Heights, just north of Taunton Avenue. They just recently received a survey for the new alignment and need to conduct geotechnical borings along that new alignment. We had a meeting with their project team yesterday, Mike and I. They have a new project lead engineer. I don't know if you had anyone that met Paul Smith previously during other presentations, but he's left Beta. And so they have a new project lead engineer on the project. With respect to East Providence, we did receive the reimbursement of 30% design costs for $300,875.
We actually got the money.
Yes,
We did.
we did.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Steve, I have a question. As we proceed on phase two, and we know all of the long-term things and long lead materials, have we started any process? We know we're gonna need miles of pipe. Is that something that is in the works or anything?
That's something we've talked about a little bit with the engineer. We haven't really gotten to the point of, if it's something that we wanted to entertain yet, but it's something to consider.
Okay.
With respect to the Pawtucket agreement, Power Corporation recently completed the hydraulic analysis. We've shared that with Pawtucket water officials. and we have a meeting scheduled with them next Wednesday to discuss and how we come about a proposed interconnection agreement.
Steve, on
Yes.
that one, do you know, do we have a written agreement with Providence Water whereby we get the water from them?
I know this already come up before. I think it's in the statute. Yeah.
Then with respect to Pawtucket, I was thinking as I was going through this, in the event of a shortage or some other disaster,
Yeah.
is there a set of priorities? In other words, where do we rank compared to other people? It's more a question probably for Joe than for you.
With respect to water from Providence?
No, for Pawtucket,
Yeah.
where we would have a written contract with them,
Yeah.
and how do we rank compared to others who might tie into their system?
You mean in terms of priority?
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
That I don't know, Tom. So we're having our first discussion with them on Wednesday, so we can kind of flush that
But that
out.
strikes me as something we might want to bear in mind as we go along.
Yeah. It's my understanding, at this point, they have plenty of water available. They don't have a significant wholesale requirement currently, which is why they've always been agreeable verbally at this point of connecting Bristol County Water and or East Providence. We should see some activity across the street in the coming month on the demolition of the exterior plant structures, the tanks and piping and such. And earlier in March, I did get in touch with one of the companies that was recommended in the letter that we received from Preserve RI. He did basically come down and take a look at it. He wasn't overly optimistic with respect to redevelopment potential of the plant buildings. I'm not quite sure which more we can do at this point.
Well, as I understand it, that's a prohibitive cost, number one, and number
Right.
two, it's not in a location where it's particularly visible and so forth, so you're moving ahead to demolish the whole thing, correct?
I think at this point, once we finish the phase one and, we kind of take all of our cold storage items that we currently use in the plant and move them out, we can start looking at putting that project out to bid.
There's no point in just filling it in and using it for storage of equipment. I'm not advocating for that.
Filling in the plant,
The,
inside the building itself?
yeah,
I don't think it really doesn't really lend itself to that.
I'm assuming that would not be cost effective.
But we also, since we have a demo contractor on board, and at some point, we plan on asking him to at least give us a ballpark price for that. And then we can make a determination, work and determine how they want to proceed. I was thinking also maybe speaking with the town, maybe one more time, 'cause I know we had a couple of town council folks pass through there to see if there's any last interest in the buildings or not. They did give National Grid or Rhode Island Energy $500,000 for that substation over on Torreston Mills,
Cool.
which is sitting there.
Tell them we'll take 75.
We'll take $1 million if that's, if they get $500,000 for that small structure.
Have you heard any more from any of the historical?
No.
$500,000 for that?
It's gonna be a brewery, it's supposed to be a brewery. What's next?
With respect to the dam removals, I did receive the CRMC formal assent on April 17th. There were some minor inconsistencies within that, and they're going to send me a new one. But that's been more or less finalized. I did receive yesterday the approval from Water Resources, which is a Rhode Island Water Quality Certification, which is an approval that we needed for both the lower and the upper. And what's pretty, what's critical about that is that typically they do not issue the water quality certification until after DEM wetlands, which is still out to public notice. That public notice period, though, does expire May 1, but I'm assuming that they probably did not receive any significant comments, which led to Rhode Island Water Resources and the Rhode Island Water Quality Certification Program issuing their approvals. So that's what I'm hoping, and hopefully now DEM wetlands is the last and final permit. Meanwhile, our engineers is just finalizing the bid documents, so once we do receive the DEM approval, we can go out to bid. I should also note, as part of the CRMC assent, that would offer testing of the salinity of the private drinking water wells for the properties that abut the reservoir. And following the public comment period from DEM, I intend to send out letters to those properties, and we'll start that process for any of those property owners that are interested in doing so. Meter replacement program hasn't made nothing significant since last month. I know Joe and his group, they have sent out certified letters for those customers who have not or have failed to respond in the past, and that we've been initiating shutoffs and continue to not respond.
Did you give them a timeline of when?
Yeah, like, 30 days, something like that. And that generally gets attention. Water purchases, typical for the month of March. You have the charts and graphs. We've started our hydrant flushing program. I believe they're kind of in the Barrington, Warren area currently. A number of employees attend the New England Waterworks Spring Conference. Most importantly, our team won the hydrant hysteria once again. I'm getting the feeling that I think most of the New England teams are just kind of like not showing up once I see that we're going to compete.
The hydrant flushing, I know that Mike DeMello was asked about colored caps.
Yes, yes.
Is there any chance that during this flushing, when we get the GPMs to be able to, I know that Mike, you had said there were plastic caps to go or whatever for the domes on the hydrants?
Yeah, there are some solutions commercially available, but we did engage PAR on some modeling, and we developed some preliminary data, but we're so close to we think we're so close to expanding the high service, we know it's going to change, so we don't want anyone to make a big investment. And we also want to confirm the new modeling once we expand the high service. And all that would obviously follow the completion of the whole tree pump station.
Yeah, there are, instead of painting all the hydrants, there are certain color tags you can
You put them on the domes.
Put on
I think.
The guys out want to know what that means anyway.
Listen, it's a high-level fire department, it's not like Warren.
So Nick and Trevor will be off. They'll be off competing nationals, but they'll be going international this time because the American Waterworks National Conference this year is in Toronto. And they will have their flight and hotel expenses paid by New England Waterworks. So, very nice.
I'll have to check with Susan if we can get a passport.
I've added the table, the capital improvement project summary for everyone's information. And that concludes my report.
Very good.
Check. Not too much else to add. I don't know if anyone noticed, we did replace the carpets on the first floor, so we're happy to get that behind us. It's one of those things, floors and ceilings, nobody looks at them ever. So, but I think it was due. There is a fresher smell to the area. So,
New car smell, new office.
Yeah, the new smell.
happy to have that behind us. A little bit of an inconvenience, but we managed it with shifting everybody around. On the dams, we've been engaged with URI and Save the Bay on environmental type work, but we have a new partner now with a new professor from Roger Williams. He's going to be doing some additional environmental pre and post work, and he's getting ready to deploy his equipment. He actually did a walkthrough with our folks today, and he's aligning his monitoring schedule. So we do have a lot of interest, and we're confident it'll be a successful project that people can, and the academia can publish about. Meters, we are still working to expand the data collection system. We hope to optimize those installations to potentially support future software capabilities. Flushing, Steve talked about it, we are transitioning to Warren as of today. So you'll see them out there if you're out at night, and we're moving through Warren and then south of Bristol. Got a picture of our guys doing a hydrant. And then the other benefit of what they're doing here is when that piece of pipe they cut out there, it's an opportunity for us to kind of see what the system's like. So when we cut that out, we inspected both that pipe and then up and down where we could take photos, and then we attach it to the physical assets within our GIS system so that we know next year, the year after, regardless of who's here, we know what the internal condition of that pipe looks like. Now that one in particular is dirty, it does need rehabilitation. So it's good information that we get, and we try to record it as often as possible. So the Hope Street Pump Station, it is where it is. Noting further information, we did try and negotiate.
I just want to express to you that disappointment, but not, it's not Mike's fault, but we're about a year and a half late. The equipment that's sitting there is just sitting there. We're going to light it off at some point in time, the generator and the rest of the pumps. I'm concerned about whether it's going to work or not. And then how late is this guy going to be with the rest of the electronics? And what would be the problem with getting rid of everything we got right now and starting over with another vendor who might have it on the shelf? I know that you said that you went for the top quality guy and you wanted to have consistency, but if somebody else out there had the same capability that might be on the shelf?
So to the warranty first, the equipment is covered by when we award substantial completion. So essentially, when we take ownership of the building is when the warranty period starts for both the manufacturers and the contractors. So we should be insulated on that aspect.
But if you light something off 2 years after you put it in place, we're going to have some faults and failures. But instead of being brand new, we don't know what's inside right now. I'm just sitting there, and it's the people who go by it and look at it. I don't think Juan cares. It's sitting there. What are you doing? What are we doing? We give them a solution. We're delayed, but.
The site is starting to take on the appearance of an abandoned home. And I noticed the other day that there's a porta potty on there which people use in the neighborhood, and truckers stop there and use it also. I start to wonder what's going on across the street. But I agree with what Bob is saying, and I wonder, at what point do you say, okay, this project is over the way we're going and we need to restart it somehow? Now, I don't even know legally if we can abandon the contractor on the basis of his claims that the materials, the components aren't available. But it's going nowhere fast. And the site is looking pretty sad over there.
Unfortunately, it is. We have engaged the contractor on the issue about seeking an alternate vendor. They did look into it, and they recommended to us that we stay the course. Unfortunately, it was, they advised it would be even longer if we engaged someone else on that specific appointment.
Yeah.
We have requested over the past couple of weeks a site presence to address some of the work that we've discussed as far as site work and stormwater improvements. We have not gotten the response that we would have liked as of right now, but they've also been waiting for more information from their suppliers as they communicated to us, and that would dovetail into how they want to mobilize to optimize their labor costs. Because as of right now, they have not asked for escalators despite the delays. But it could with the
Have you independently confirmed that the equipment that is back ordered is in fact not available from anyone else?
No, I unfortunately have not confirmed that with the other vendors. I'm relying on the contract for that information.
I think you need to do that.
No.
Because it may be that the price has gone up and they don't want to buy it at that price.
Yeah.
I just think that you need to independently figure that out.
And who's the engineering manager on this? Consultant?
PAR did the design.
Yeah, that might be a task for PAR to be assigned to check into the availability of
I mean, it's kind of
alternatives
like
as
if
well.
somebody told you the hot water heater for your house was going to take a year for it to be replaced, you'd investigate alternatives, right? I would. And I find contractors tell you what's convenient to them, but not necessarily to you.
Why are they hesitant to just go in there and clean up the site anyway?
Unfortunately, I think it's just a cost thing for him. He wants to be as productive as possible, and
We'll get together, we'll talk with PAR and see what we can do. We'll put together a letter, from me to really kind of see if we can get anything going on them. I think at the very least, I think that even though things aren't happening, to clean up the site and make it presentable. I'm not quite sure, Matt, I thought they'd be getting to the drainage work soon.
that was our expectation. That's what they communicated to us, but
Yeah. Maybe it's time we need to like really start
yeah.
putting some
What does that
some
work
deadlines
have to
to
do with
them.
the electrical equipment, period? In their schedule, they can't change their schedule and their work program?
Yeah, I don't know their internal scheduling as it relates to their other obligations to other projects. But certain things can't move forward, it has to be sequenced. So they try to optimize their time as it relates to moving people around and or equipment around.
Okay, so you'll talk to PAR and there'll be some more discussion of this, and we'll have a further update next month on what's going on. Anything else, Mike?
The only other thing is we have our annual contracts opening next week and the roof contract opening next week. So we are hopeful that we get a multitude of good responses that we can then select from. That's it.
Thanks. Susan?
My report just basically covers the two main distribution projects, one from last year and then starting out with this year's. This year we have W. Welsh Company doing mostly a cleaning and lining project. They have started on Rumstick Road and our bypass has been set up and they're getting that tested and we'll be doing work starting tomorrow, the actual work. So that's rolling along. On that project, we did get a request from the town because they're going to be reclaiming Burnside Street in Bristol this fall. And they just put out, let us know so that in case we had work to do on that street. It turns out it is almost 100-year-old cast iron main. Definitely could use to be cleaned and lined, and of Coincidentally, we had just hired a cleaning and lining contractor, so we asked Walsh if they'd be interested in the additional work, and they have agreed, and we have enough in the contingency to cover the additional work, so we're not asking for any additional funds, but just wanted to let you know that we have added one small street to that project, but it's definitely in line with the work that's already being done. We will be coordinating with the town also on Bradford Street, which is already in the project. They also are doing some paving there. So we like that when we can work with the town to get our water main work done, and then the town is going to be doing a paving project. It's a win-win for everybody. And then the last year's project is wrapping up. That was Boyle and Fogarty. They still have some paving to do, the work that they did outside of our offices, and some in Bristol where they have to do final paving, and some mill and overlay paving, so we still have that work. But we also have reached out to them, since there is quite a bit of, there is some money in the contingency for that project, to see if they'd be willing to do a little bit of extra scope, and they also are agreeable to that. So we are in the process of working with them. Again, the money would be from the contingency and not any additional funds needed.
On Mount Hope Avenue, we did the relining last year or the year before, and we were supposed to repave that, and then it worked that the town was gonna do it?
No, that was one of the ones we, also bumped up doing that work because the town was going to be doing the paving.
But the town's the one responsible for paving,
They're gonna do
correct?
the curb to curb,
Okay.
right, we're done there.
Yes, okay.
Okay, and we have Randy's report here as well. So anything you want to say?
I've never been upgrading the laptops for the vehicles they use in the field. And other than that, upgrading Windows throughout the desktops here as well. And then normal IT stuff.
Financial report, Dan?
All right, the first month of the year, before I start that, the auditors were here Monday. They finished Tuesday, so they're all done. They're doing whatever they gotta do to finish it up. There's one little, the pension adjustment I gotta make on, just to get it in our books on this side. She's gonna try to see about getting a draft as soon as possible, kind of thing. So audit went smooth, they didn't bother anybody too much. In and out, matter of fact, nobody really even realized they were around too much. So we have March. So this one I like, there's only March versus March, since it's only 1 month. So March, the revenue looks really crazy, looks really like it increased a lot. In the report it says actually decreased, but it's actually an increase. Part of that is due to the fact, it's mostly timing of the billing. Part of that is last March was like the second lowest March in like 10 years. And this March is a little more normal. And then on top of that, with that shift for those 9 routes that we did back in December, I think, we shifted some of the heavier volume routes into this time frame. So that contributed. We should see that kind of level out going forward as the year progresses. And then hopefully like next year, we'll be looking at similar billing timing patterns in specific routes. The expenses for March are only a little bit higher than they were last year. A lot of it is really timing. And really the big piece of it is March last year versus March this year, the pension contribution increased just based on the reports that we get from the pension company. So last March was only contributed like $3,600, and this year it's like $28,000. And the 457 contribution piece from the company is also a little bit higher this March than it was last year, which makes sense with raises, and I know a couple of people bumped up their contribution this year. So now we just go on to actual versus budget. The revenue is up 21% change over budget. Again, some of that is that shifting of those routes, and then some of it is just timing. Calculation, I should say, not timing. I try to spread the revenue from the year based on like an average of the last 4 years' monthly revenue. So obviously this March, we're a little bit higher usage than the average for the last 4 Marches. For the expenses, we're under budget about 9%. The 3 biggest ones under budget, again, it's all timing. Professional fees, there's not a lot of professional fees in March. Again, I just kind of budget that out like 1/12 or so. And operations, maintenance expense and operations other, again, there's not a lot of activity going on in March. So you take the whole year and divide it by 12, it's gonna be months that look a little weird like that. The pages 6 through 8 are the little graphs and schedules with the dollars billed and gallons billed. Again, March looks a little crazy. Part of that is timing with the routes, and I did have to book some revenue that didn't hit the billing system until the beginning of March, was actually February revenue. So I recorded that correctly in the financial statements for GAAP purposes, but Joe didn't necessarily go back and adjust his schedule on this end. So that's about 400,000 and change that I had to shift. Page 9 is the trust report. Trust fund report, the debt service ratio for March, 6.15, still good. Page 10 is the pension summary report, a little bit of an increase for March and for the plan year through March. The balance at the end of March is just a little under 3.5 million. And then I just put in that page 11 is the OPEB trust summary report, that page. Again, I only get that quarterly, so that's why you get February, and I'm looking at March now. So we won't get another one of those till maybe May. So I won't have that till June, maybe the June meeting. But I'll try to put that in there every quarter when I get it, after I get it. And that is it.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Moving on to the next item on the agenda is board member of town council reports. Does anybody have anything to bring up? Hearing none, we move to item 7, approval for purchase of a Ford F-550 truck.
John?
I thought we just spent a ton of money fixing the new Ford.
What would you have, what would you, if you bought something else, what would you buy that you wouldn't have to fix?
Chevy.
There you go.
Our past history shows that.
Do we have the director make a presentation first?
You should have started the shit when they first started buying vehicles.
Should have just kept all the Chevy.
So you're looking for approval?
Anyway, I'm seeking approval from the board on the purchase of a Ford F-550 mid-size dump to support our operations.
Is this aluminum body?
It's from MHQ, from the state purchasing agreement. We did get a subsequent price also directly from Tasker Ford, and it was higher. So the low bid is from the master price agreement for $85,160.01.
Move to approve as.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Once we put this order in, we likely won't see this for about a year.
Another thing.
And we have a presentation next on the SCADA system. Mike's going to
So I asked Mike, because we had such an abbreviated agenda, and I don't know if anyone, no, you know, board members have asked, you know, they'd like to see, do system overview and presentations on the system. And I don't know if anybody's has seen our SCADA and what it does. So Mike, it's brief.
It's brief.
Very brief, but it's informative.
So, as Steve introduced, he asked me to kind of talk about our SCADA. So that's our supervisory control and data acquisition system. So this is installed throughout the system. And what is it? Essentially, it's a lot of computers. When you think microchips and things like that, this is one of the things that is heavily impacted by that. These PLCs, RTUs, and things of that nature have limited availability in the market. We use Allen Bradley specifically. There are other products, and that crosses the line into some of the security stuff as far as even global equipment. But in general, it's a bunch of instruments that are installed to monitor certain parameters. They record that information, transmit it, and the computers will utilize some of that information in the control system processes. This picture is an overly simplified one. So this is just kind of an endpoint, but it does detail the specific equipment that's in there. So we have PLCs, we have an input-output module, we have a communications modem. So this is a 2x2 box, and these can get as big as 6 to 8 feet tall and can have hundreds, if not thousands, of wires that you have to ring out each side. They can get very, very complicated. So within those white channels are all buried wires that kind of needs them all up. So how do we use it? So as a water utility, we pump water, we flow control water, we do things to water. So every time we do something, we want to know what we're doing, how we're doing it, how it's impacting it. So here we have a couple installations for pressure. So I specifically chose this because it kind of shows how our equipment's installed, but how we also add a little bit of resiliency. So these instruments are collecting data. That data is now feeding into PLCs and gonna do things. But though we invest and rely on technology, we also have to plan on that technology either failing or getting compromised or just otherwise not being available. So that's why whenever we install something, we do try to mitigate that. In this situation, we're using an analog gauge that's as old as time. But when we go there and we're essentially running in the dark, we will know what the pressure is at that point. So we still rely on old school things, writing notes on the walls, certain institutional knowledge type things. And then we can make physical adjustments versus the process control logic does it automatically behind the scenes based on the varied inputs that come into it. So where do we use it? I included this just to kind of give an overview of that. We're spread out. This is how our system looks spatially. We got pump stations down in the system. We're managing now supplies from Providence Water through 2 pipelines, and then it makes its way down to the main pump station at Nair Road. So at these stations, along with tanks, meter vaults, we're collecting multitude of information, whether it be flow, pressure, water quality, all things like that. So the SCADA system is the repository for that. So it is really critical, not just from a process control standpoint, but it's a singular repository where we can go interact with that data. Because if we collect data, we want to be able to use it, interact with it, analyze it, and make as informed decisions as possible. So that was how the system looks spatially. This is how it looks on our overview screen. So that is our system, tanks. We have system status. We know what water is flowing from where. We know the pressures. And we also know water quality data where we have sensors installed. So all of this stuff is not just constantly, the instruments are constantly looking for what they're supposed to be recording, but it's also constantly collecting and constantly communicating. So all this is constantly going on behind the scenes. And the process logic is looking for variables that will then alarm, variables that will then change a piece of mechanical equipment. or otherwise based on this specific instrument.
So let me just ask a question. That generates a tremendous quantity of information that may have historic value. And so in terms of backing that up,
So yeah, that dovetails into how we back up. We do dailies, both local and offsite, and that's all of this, because we host this locally. So it's part of our IT infrastructure that gets backed up routinely. But there's a big history, specifically this is like archive file that gets created as these trends develop. It's a point.
so say at the end of 2022, that's put into an archive.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the end of 2021, because we want to compare to the previous year.
We can interact with it all in the system. It does it all in there, so it doesn't get archived separately. So you can then interrogate the trends and see that old data. So you can see year over year, go back to a specific window and see what was it doing at that time, or whatever the parameter is you're looking for during that specific time frame. So along with the recording, we also have the process control. So the process control does things as simple as recording a tank level and then turning a pump on or off based on that tank level. So we create set points. The system will look for that set point to be satisfied. And then once the logic is satisfied, it'll take an action on a mechanical equipment. So all that happens in that initial cabinet I showed, all of that, different types of electrical signals, all that happens in that little cabinet. Input, outputs come into the output module, the process, the PLC is the brain of it, and it'll determine what to do, and then relays will then actuate different higher voltage equipments like pumps. So here's a couple examples of pump controls and chemical feed controls. And then the other critical thing is alarms. So this system tied into it, and it analyzes the alarms internally, but then it's tied into an external alarming system so we can get the information out of it and get it into the hands of the proper people who will respond accordingly. And then the trends. So this is where the information gets archived. That overview scene, that's just a snapshot in time. 10 seconds later, that overview screen is refreshed, and that information that was there is now old. It only lives in these trends. So this is where I interrogate SCADA a lot. I live in the trends, I'll make custom trends, and it allows us to see what's going on. You can use a trend to trend, say, a pump performance long term. You can see if it's degrading, and then you can ascertain why. You can look at it for pressures. Is pressure increasing? Is pressure decreasing? And you can also use it, which we do for, unfortunately it's reactive, but water breaks. So was something going on that preceded this break? So we try to assess it as much as possible through the information that we have available.
Does this monitor the pumps as far as, I'm trying to think, acoustically? If you're monitoring a pump and you start to hear a bearing go?
It doesn't. You can add in vibration monitoring and heat sensors, and then you can do that and it'll record. But we do not have that on our equipment. We do pump maintenance through work orders, not through SCADA.
So you wait for a failure, you do maintenance on it on a regular basis?
Yeah, we do. We check the heats, we check the bearing temperatures,
Okay.
we check run times, pressures. But yeah, we do have a pump maintenance program, but it's not tied into the SCADA, so we're not getting that information live in.
Where does all this information come in? Right here?
This is the landing zone, yeah. It all lands here, our servers are here. We move them all upstairs so they're away from essentially the fire system. That's the biggest threat to it inside the building. But the tank sites are the essentially very large radio antennas that broadcast the information. They collect it from remote points, collect it and kick it here. We have an antenna here that receives everything.
Who in the organization has access to the data?
It is limited. There's a few operators that have access. We do control within SCADA what certain people can do, whether it's view only, or be able to manipulate. So it is password protected on multiple levels.
Now, does this generate alarms that would alert you at home?
Yes. It's all phone calls. So what we discussed so far was kind of fixed installations of pump stations, places where there's utility power, backup power, HVAC to help protect the equipment. Really robust infrastructure that supports fixed deployments. But also in the system, we have some remote sites where information is valuable. So here's an example of a system where we've installed pressure sensors, where essentially it's the same type of sensor. We target the sensor based on what parameter we want to look for. In this case, it's pressure. That's tied into an RTU, and that RTU is then now communicating up to a server, very similar to how SCADA works. In this instance, it's all battery and cell. So these are living off a battery, and then they're all making a phone call periodically with the data, and that goes up to a server. And that gets communicated into the truly limited system. And that is for remote places where we don't want to do utility, power's not available, and we don't want to do utility drop or significant infrastructure. All right. So that's the overview. And again, purposefully short, not to optimize everyone's time. This is the actual SCADA system. So this is our new meter vault up in East Providence. So we built this screen. We're now collecting different information. We're flowing water. So that's, again, constantly going.
This is real time?
This is real time, yep. So that's the water that's coming from East Providence right now. And then this is the water that's coming from our Providence water connection. And then we have our, where is it?
That's in Providence?
Excuse me, yep, right near Johnson and Wales.
Yeah.
Where that meter vault is, yep.
Not for the Columbia Park before.
And then this is an example of our Medicom pump station. So we have multiple sensors here, pressure, temperature, all sorts of things. And then we get into where we actually work with the equipment by changing these type of set points. We can manipulate how the equipment will run. We can adjust speeds, where the tank is going to fill, where it's going to call for water, or where the tank will ultimately be satisfied. It also gives us run status. So here we can see we've adopted a green means go. Some people adopt the inverse of that, but these things are running, these things are off. And then the same thing for chemical feed type equipment. So that is SCADA. And then we have our trends. That's the most active one. These are all the flows that come through the system. So these flows just kind of occur, and the deviations in the flows are resultant of mechanical equipment doing something to the flow.
If you have a water break, a main break someplace, does this sort of give you the first kick that you have a problem when it's?
If it's big enough. So right now it's not configured the same way, but we have Columbia and East Providence right here. So these two flows. So right now we're seeing a differential because of power feeding from the city of East Providence. But these are on opposite sides of the river, intended to be like that. So if you ever see a differential, it means
Something in the middle.
something's wrong. So we have that in. So if we see a differential that exceeds the set point, I think we have it at like 5% or less, it'll tell us It'll give us an alarm that there's a flow differential, and we have that all along the East Bay pipeline to identify sooner than later if something is awry.
I was looking at like some ends on Main Street in Warren, you pop up at the main line. Would you get that indication here at the nearest pump station?
No, so that would only be if we're in a high demand neighborhood, say pumping,
Yeah.
and we had a really extended pump runtime in the pump. And where we see that now is in the Metacom station that lifts water into the high service. So if we have a leak in the high service, we will see extended run times. And that's something that helps us identify because sometimes they don't always surface. So we spend, going back, we had a really cold snap and we spent like a week looking for one. We knew it was there because of the run times and the pressures, but it was going into a drain and it wasn't surfacing. So we were doing acoustic monitoring, all this stuff to look for it. We found it in the drain, but where the actual break was, like it was thousands of feet away. But yeah, in certain situations, based on the spatial location and the type of sensor, we can use this information to help.
Thanks.
And then this is the actual Trimble system. So these are the actual deployments. We have them located spatially throughout the system. And then, again, it's the same idea. They are out there. They have a bunch of status information. And then we have what it's looking for. As this is giving us the pressure variations, and then we can change the term, and we can look at long-term information. And if we see deltas, we can investigate what potentially went wrong, whether it was just an equipment little burp or was there an event. This stuff we know it works because when we get into flushing season, we see wide variations based on when they're flowing and when they're not flowing hydrants. So it is very good information to have. And again, it does help identify leaks if they're in the vicinity because you will see lower pressure. So that's it in a nutshell. Anyone has any questions?
Thank you. Amazing.
So if you can do all that stuff at home, how do we know you're in the office?
Whoa. That was a shot.
It's troubleshooting factor.
It's an evolving landscape, it really is.
You're always here, right?
Go out with the phone and hold it on the
Okay. Next item on the agenda is executive session. Do we have a motion to go into executive session? So moved.
Second.
Are we all in favor of going into executive session? Raise your hands.
And just to reflect on the record, this is for litigation pursuant to RIGL section 42-46-5A2 and approval of executive session minutes.
Thank you. On the agenda is just to take.
Oh, we got to seal minutes.
Motion to seal the minutes of the executive session.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next scheduled meeting is for our annual meeting on May the 25th, as well as our board meeting on May the 25th.
Motion that be accepted. Again.
I don't think we need to have a motion.
We don't need to
It's
do
just
anything.
It's just a notice.
Show up. You're gonna come?
Show up.
Yeah.
Be there, be square.
God willing.
And the last item on the agenda is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I thought he said third.
So moved.
That was a good presentation.
Dan?
Oh, glad you enjoyed it.